Hey guys, I'm learning TFT and I'm sharing my learnings with you so that you can learn and I can learn better as well. In this Pro Chat, I'm excited to have a conversation with a three-time now TPC Tier 1 player. He will be going to his second Worlds coming up. He's the winner of the most recent Set 16 America's Regionals. He's also been peak rank 1 NA, I believe, for about a day. Marcel P, you're also the first repeat pro chatter that I'm having on this channel. So yeah, excited to have you back.
It's an honor to be back. Thanks for having me on again.
Yeah. So we're gonna mix things up this pro chat. A little less focus on strategy and tactics and more focus on you and like kind of your journey, where you've come from, where you are now, and where you're kind of headed. So first, just kind of tying back to our last conversation, which crazily enough was almost 2 years ago. We were
It's been that long. Damn.
Yeah, during that conversation, it was actually, I believe, the day that you were gonna tell your manager that you were gonna quit.
Really? That was wow, cool timing. I didn't realize it was literally on that exact timing.
A lot has changed since then, and I remember you having a lot of emotions, both excitement and like kind of a little like kind of questioning, like, oh, is this the right call to make? And so can you talk a little bit more now that you are where you are, having accomplished the things that you've accomplished, looking back at maybe where you were then and thinking about how far you've come, as well as if you could have a conversation with yourself from 2 years ago when we were having that conversation, what would you say to that version of yourself today?
You know, it's crazy because I think about this like fairly regularly and a lot in depth quite recently. I was just looking through my results set by set. I maintain my stats as well, like per set AVP in tournaments and whatnot, win rates, etc. And I was looking at my results. I don't know if it's useful to even bring up, but like if I look at like my set 12 results, I just use like Wikipedia to make it easy. And I guess because it's easy to lose track of where you've been when you're very iteratively trying to improve on your current state. But I feel like if the player I am today had the results I had when I was in set 12, which is when I decided to quit, I don't think in my current state I would tell myself to quit my job. I think I would look at those results and I would say, maybe like wait until you have a little better results. Like realistically, I think that's like, but that's only like fast forwarding until today, which is not a realistic scenario at all, right? But it just shows like how much you lose sight of the bigger picture. Even like it's almost like I've gained perspective in a way that makes me almost like lose the forest for the trees. I'm now like trying to aim for, very specific things. I'm aiming for decreasing my eighth rate from what it is. It's improved a lot from last set to this set. I'm looking at very specific things like my itemization on 4-7. I'm looking at trying to improve my world performance such that if you were to just throw at me very blind context results of a player who finishes in Tactician's trials back then, like 60th and in Cup 50th or whatever it was, I would say, this guy needs more to prove before having any shot of like making it to the pro circuit, right? But for me back then, my whole context was I haven't had the chance to put in all my time, and I feel like I have the shot at becoming one of becoming my version of what best means to me, and I haven't had the shot at doing that. Haven't had a shot at doing that at a hobby I really love, and so I'm gonna do it. And I think if I were to have the chance to inform my former self without the context, I would almost discourage myself, I'm pretty sure. But it's just kind of crazy to think, right? Almost kind of sad in that way. But no, it just shows that like I don't think it truly makes sense to like get the perspective of someone who's like lost in the cycle of trying to like figure their whole thing out, right? Unless they have the full picture, right? Like maybe if I had the full picture of myself, which I do, but I guess I'm just saying if it was just a blind results page I was looking at, I wouldn't advise that person to keep going. It's just kind of crazy.
How about conversely, if we were able to talk to you 2 years ago, how do you think that version of yourself would view the progress that you've made and where you are today? What do you think 2 years ago you would think of where
Oh, what
you
would
are?
I think back then if you told me I would get to this state?
Yeah.
Oh, I would immediately become like way more confident in my approach if you told me that I could
Mm,
achieve this. Like to me, getting to just regionals was already like a big amount of validation, such that um I'm not trying to say that I'm now like at an insane like perfect player level or anything like that. But all I'll say is it's beyond what I thought would be like a happy point of like, oh, I achieved what I need to. And that being said, I feel like I still have so much room to improve. But
mhm.
I definitely viewed myself and my approach as being far from something that could get me to this level, where I feel like objectively my results in the past two sets are probably like top 5 NA now. Like, yeah, I'm usually not one to like to like put ranks or uh, talk very like in depth on accolades and try to say I'm like nth the best player. But just objectively, it would be illogical for me to say I'm not top 5 in the last two sets based on my results in the last two sets. I'm not trying to go further beyond that. And yeah, and if you were to tell that to me from 2 years ago, I would be over the moon and just like, wow, I didn't think that. I had always had some faith in my approach, but to get to this level of consistency and winning events and reforging my emblems into 10 Noxus, I would be over the moon.
How do you think, if you were able to have that level of confidence, and I think you could also project this out into the next, let's say, 2 years from now? Personally, and I've DM'd you about this, like, I feel like you got a good shot at winning Worlds at some point within the next 2 years, whether or not that's this Worlds or not, just because, and we'll get into like kind of the slope and y-intercept conversation as well that we talked about before. If you knew you were gonna be able to win Worlds at some point in the next 2 years, how would that level of confidence change how you act today?
How would that change? Honestly,
Or
while
would
I
it
would
not?
have more confidence in my approach, I don't think it would change anything, if I'm being honest. And if anything, I feel like it's one of my strengths that I consider myself like a player that needs a lot to improve.
Mhm.
Like that is like the reason why I think I see a lot of people saying or calling me like a harder worker in TFT and all that. And for me, it's all just necessary. I don't think this is something that like I'm inherently like I just feel like I have to because I'm lacking in a lot of ways and I there's so many things I can improve at, such that like yes I would have confidence of where I could go. I guess I would like have less doubt in that what I'm doing is the right thing.
Mhm.
So I guess it would cause me less stress in that way. But in terms of the actual approach and how it would manifest, I don't think it would change all that much. Maybe it would allow me to like be a little more like sometimes I feel like some of my approaches to improving are a little more in the creatives, maybe not creative, but like not as common side. Like getting coaching from a lot of different coaches, for example, which I've done in the past, which you do as well, which I always enjoyed your approach in that sense. I also have always been one to listen to a really wide perspective, really wide range of perspectives, even within a study group. Like
Yeah.
within my own study group, for example, you will have, and I'm sure you've been in some of these calls or in many of these calls, you'll
Mhm.
have people on completely different sides of topics, and no one is listening to anyone. And this is not in just to Mike. This is anyone's study group. You and anyone's like debate in any debate forum. There will be people with really strong opinions on either side, and there will be sides that don't budge. And if anything, I will say this: the people that don't budge are usually not in the minority. Usually, it's more often that people don't budge than people that like willingly like listen to everyone.
Mhm.
And I have always been more on the side of more easily swayed when presented with a good logical, sort of argument to something. And at times I've wondered, is that good or bad for my own overall improvement? If you look at a lot of the top players in NA, I don't think they necessarily fall into that style. I think most players, and across most endeavors in general, not even just games, most top achieving people aren't very easily swayed. They usually are very opinionated, right?
Mhm.
But I think in just having these results now across several endeavors, not just TFT, right? I feel like I've over time like built more and more confidence and trust in myself that this is an approach that works for me. I while I am easily swayed, I am able to stay grounded and still like, have an opinion that is formed. If anything, more like arrogantly, I would say it's better in that you take a wider perspective, right? As long as you're able to bring it back towards an actual consensus in your head that is weighted by some probability. If anything, I think it's just a more nuanced way of looking at things as opposed to being very black and white. That being said, it can lead to indecision, right? So there are downsides for sure.
Right. It's interesting that you bring this point up because I have a section again. The first time we did this chat, I pulled up a bunch of Marcel Proust quotes.
Yeah, I remember.
And I have a few more, and I was gonna save it for a later section, but because you brought this point up, I wanted to share
relevant.
one quote.
Yeah. Let's hear them.
Which, by the way, before I say the quote, I feel like so much of this is relevant not just within a TFT context about how to get better, but also just like the state of the world and where we're at now, both with AI and being able to have your own taste and value system aside from what the AI spits out to you. Like, and a lot of AI and how people use it now is like the AI just becomes an echo chamber, not just in social media and technology of what it was before, but it's like an echo chamber of you and your specific AI that's trying to design to get engagement from you to just say what you want to hear.
Oh, for sure.
Having your AI, like I actually will ask ChatGPT and Claude, like, don't give me what I want to hear, like push back on my idea. And like, I think you're very similar to that. Mm-hmm. But also I think just conflict in the world at large is very much just like, you know, what you're describing with the study groups is just what happens in politics. And particularly because this specific study group is so like global, I think it's just an interesting like use case of like how humans interact. For sure, particularly in something that's high stakes and like on such a broad scale. Okay, but here's the quote. The only true voyage of discovery would be not to visit strange lands, but to possess other eyes, to behold the universe through the eyes of another, of 100 others, to behold the 100 universes that each of them beholds.
I like that. That's exactly what I'm saying. You needed various perspectives. See, you heard it from two Marcel P's now.
I still think this guy's like this was you in your reincarnated version of this guy.
I mean, have you seen both of us in the same room? Yeah, I don't know. Maybe we're one and the same.
Yeah. So does that just kind of reinforce what you already believed? Is there anything new or novel that kind of comes out of that quote for you?
Could you repeat how he what was the first thing he said? Because I got the overall gist, but I forget how he introduced the whole quote.
Yeah, he said the only true voyage of discovery would be not to visit strange lands, but to possess other eyes. So I think part of, at least my interpretation of this, is even with, let's just say it's using TFT as a context. It's like when people say like, oh, I'm bored with this set, or like this meta is like stale, or like this was so one-dimensional. It's like one way to look at that is like blame the game designers and be like, oh, you need to make a better game. Like next set needs on to next set, right? Like, but I think what Proust is saying here is like it's not just about the external what's there. It's about how you perceive it. Like if you talk to a bunch of other TFT players, like there's bound to be someone out there that actually, and Mort talks about this a lot, right? There's going to be sets that people hate, but even out of those sets that people hate, there's some subset that actually love it. And it's like, how do you see the world, the same world that we were all looking at from different perspectives?
100%. I do think what's interesting is that he calls it, this is like the true voyage of discovery. And I think it's, I agree in a lot of ways in that sense, but it then begs the question, like, if you're trying to go beyond just discovery, then is it still the same? And this is where I've potentially struggled with it in ways where if you're trying to go from discovery to more so mastery, is that different potentially, right? And I think that in a lot of ways it can be, and you sort of need to balance both, because I think I definitely am way more on the side of Marcel Proust, and that I just lean way more into hearing everyone's perspectives and watching everyone else's streams and trying to sort of put the pieces together in that way. But when it comes to really narrowing down a read before a tournament, or wanting to have like the utmost confidence on a line, or the way you play a given a given line, for example, you do sort of need to balance like going from discovery mode to, or what they call exploration versus exploitation, right? And sitting there and just saying my interpretation of this is the correct one. And it's really hard to balance that, right?
Yeah, for sure. I'm curious because particularly because you have kind of mentioned that I think even last Pro Chat that we talked, you came off as much more doubting your own perspective. And I vaguely recall whether it was that or maybe one of our coaching sessions where you were like, I feel like sometimes I gotta actually have a perspective and stick with it, right?
Mhm.
I'm curious how you feel like you've evolved on that front. And when you approach tournaments now, do you feel like you have a more specific anchor and viewpoint that's uniquely your own, as opposed to the hodgepodge of perspectives that you created a collage?
Yeah, I think the big thing with me and learning and sort of trying to build on things I've learned in the past has always been that I definitely am not like I don't have perfect memory by any means, but I usually have a good memory of things that I've learned in depth. And I would say the biggest thing that I'm able to notice that I have differently than just like, every new meta using, the best read from like Basic mixed with the best read from Raptor mix, and I just do that every single set, every single batch, rinse, repeat, is I draw a lot of similarities between patches that I'm currently playing and patches from 5 sets ago or 7 sets ago. And I'll remember that a very specific 3-cost line that I played will have a different playstyle that lends really well to the way you play Vayne in this patch, as a random example. And it's usually through these patterns that I feel I differentiate myself a little bit. Not to say that I do it perfectly by any means, but yeah, I feel like because I'm so lost in trying to improve in all these ways, and I have good memory of all my coaching lessons since set 5. I got coaching from Basic back in set 5, which is kind of fun that we're study partners now and going to Worlds together back to back. And he was giving me paid coaching sessions to get me out of I think I was like low challenger then, or like felt like hard stuck low challenger GM. I remember so many of the nuances of that coaching session. I remember getting coached by Ramblin in set 5, getting coached by Dish Soap in set 7. I remember the ways he was flaming me. I remember he was saying that are you allergic to making? Why are we allergic to making declaw? Like, I wasn't slamming a declaw for no real reason, and he was like, the way he stated it was all like very well meant. It's just kind of funny the way it was worded. I remember that so vividly. But yeah, I think it's these things that these patterns that I try to draw over time that help build a more holistic view, I guess, on my reads.
Yeah. Speaking of Dish Soap, last time we had this conversation, we were like glazing the guy, like he was on top of the world. I think he was coming off like a ton of victories. Like everyone was like, Dish Soap is the GOAT. No one's gonna be able to top him. And I want to connect that with like the conversation we had around, y-intercept versus slope, because your slope has been like one of the highest slopes of players out there, right? I'm curious what your perspective is on how far you've come between where you were back then to where you are now. What your like kind of slope looks like, particularly relative to other players in the competitive scene right now, and which other players in the community do you feel like have slopes, like basically the highest slopes that you're like, oh shit, like I gotta pay attention to this guy?
I will. I'll be both modest and not modest. And on the not modest side, I don't think there's a player that's had comparable slope to mine in the time that I've been working on the game, and I'm extremely proud of that. But I am very, very aware that all improvements plateau in various ways, whether it's a temporary plateau or a permanent plateau. Like God forbid, right? But you never know. Like, I mean, no improvement is ever really promised, and slope, no. We're all just guesstimating the true lines of all these rates of improvement. There's a lot of variance in this game as well, right? So there's no real promise of continued improvement no matter where you are. But yes, I am extremely proud that I've had the improvement I've had, dating back to I mean, since I truly started full timing the game since set 12, not just in terms of tournament results, ladder results, like ladder stats. My AVPs in tournaments have been. This is my first set under a 4.0. I think I had one bad tournament this set, and my bad tournament was going 17th out of 32. where I was tiebreakered out. I felt really bitter about it. I feel like I was meant to make it through. That tiebreak was I was tie broken with Weijun, who won the tournament. So I felt like I didn't even deserve to get tie broken out of the tournament at that point. But if you were to tell me a previous version of myself from previous sets of TFT that my worst tournament would be middle of the field, I would think that was insane, because I always view this tournament, this game, as a game of variance, right? And hopefully I can continue to improve on that. But other players that have had really good improvement rates, I think Cambio Lee, I would be remiss to not mention him. We were around similar points, I think, around sets 10 through 13. He was maybe slightly better, but he's also had really, really good improvement for sure. If anything, you could probably argue it's like almost the same. And in fact, he's had higher peaks for sure. He made final lobby at Worlds, and he's back to back Worlds, right? So he's definitely a beast and has had higher peaks than me. I think I've had a better set than him, but this is the one set I've outperformed him. Other than that, he's been better. And so he's had really insane improvement. I chat with him every now and then. He's not in my study group, but I do respect his approach for sure and his results. I think very highly of him. Players outside of Cam, I don't know. I think it's mostly been like players that have come out of tier 2 that have done well, right, in regionals, for example, on this set. But I don't know if I've tracked players' results over a long period of time to really say, besides Cam and myself, if anyone else. I would say Broseph probably. Broseph fits that bill. Yeah. But with Broseph, I think, to me, the reason why it almost comes off as like, oh yeah, it's almost expected, is because I see his approach. I just think he's so correct about how he does everything that it almost just makes sense that he gets better. But if you were to track the improvement, for sure he's improved a lot. It's been really good slope as well, and I'm really happy for the guy. And it's been super awesome for us to go from, like, he wasn't tier 1, and so he's always been good, but he had sort of a down set last set, and then he had accompanied me to Worlds, helped me out, and then now we're competing together, which is just awesome. Made it together. We duked it out at regional finals, and then we made it out together.
Yeah, that was fun watching you guys play against each other in the finals.
For sure.
All right. On the subject of slope, I was watching your host tourney win interview with Rodan. One of the things that you mentioned that you've been kind of working on is leaning into higher variance play instead of what maybe is your natural inclination of playing safer. And like kind of, you brought up the example of spreading roots and taking the lower variance angles. I'm curious, because I like to view TFT as kind of a metaphor for life. Like, how risk-taking of a person in your personal life are you? And to what extent has maybe being deliberate about practicing higher variance play maybe affected the way you approach risk and view, like, going for Hail Mary plays, like, in your own personal life? Or has that not?
That's a really interesting question. I've never thought about it in that, like, going back from, like, I've always thought about how your approach in real life can affect the styles of plays you make in TFT. I've never thought about, you learn something in TFT and then you bring it back. I don't know why I haven't thought about it like that. I just haven't. And thinking about it now, off the top of my head, because I think, just to narrow in on that a bit, the things that I felt I've truly improved that have allowed me to go for these more, like, what do you call, high risk plays. It's more accurate evaluation of spots in general, but specifically of the quote unquote vanilla spots. I think I used to have too much optimism around vanilla spots in TFT. The spots where you don't have any crazy emblem, you don't have any crazy augment, your items are not bad, not good, your units are also not bad, which is like the most common spot in TFT. And I used to think of those spots like, now I realize I was overly optimistic with those spots. And what it took for me to understand that is to sit in call with a whole variety of players, all very good, all different. So I know I'm not overfitting to one guy's perspective, and hear them all say across, like, these various spots that I have that are average, not that everyone has that average, that these spots suck. Like, and also to play them out myself and to see that they do kind of suck. It's like ultimately realizing that my spots that I thought were around a 4.5s are actually like 5.5s. And all it takes is that little bit of adjustment in EV to understand that now you're allowed to take an augment that can send you 6.5. Because if it gives you some promise of a 2.0 and some hits, then it's just better than a 5.5, right? You only really believe in safe when safe is guaranteed to have some level of good. But when it's guaranteed fairly bad, then you allow yourself to take the risk, right? And so I'm trying to think of how to extend that into real life, and maybe struggling off the top of my head right now, but that's sort of what it is, right? It's just understanding when your situation is lacking something that you need some juice. That's how I started thinking about it in TFT.
So the thought that immediately pops into my mind, which connects with some of the stuff we talked about a little bit before I hit record, is I actually think a lot of people are facing this right now, is how AI is going to affect everybody's lives, right? Like there's a lot of people that are in this middling spot that's like, oh, I could think of some optimistic perspective about how this is all going to play out in the near future, but it's also like kind of questionable. It's like people that are maybe even trying to apply to college right now, like the unemployment rate of college grads right now is lower than non-college grads for the first time in like forever. And it's like what was considered a safe play historically with what's happening in AI could for a lot of people be like the lowest EV play they could take.
Yeah, and it's crazy to think of it in that way, right? Like you never know, and at this point, yeah, I think if you can't be sure about your evaluation, you just don't know, right? Like it used to be the case that getting a college degree and getting a CS degree back when I was in college was like truly like one of the highest EV things you could do. And now, it's not that we actually just don't know. It's impossible to project, right? It's not like we have, like the way I was able to get through it in TFT is sitting with really good players. That's still not guaranteed perfect, but I get their opinions, right? And now I guess the equivalent would be you sit with all the top AI researchers and ask them, I guess. But that would be quite difficult as well to do. But yeah, it's just a really interesting thought.
Yeah. And I think part of the difficulty of, whether it's TFT or your life, which obviously with your life feels like a lot higher stakes, but with TFT, it's like you have what you call yourself cautiously optimistic of a known spot versus the unknown, which theoretically you're like, okay, well, yeah, I could have a higher win share or I could have a higher top 2 rate from this, but I could also have more 7s and 8s. And it's just like the discomfort of sitting with the unknown, like, and the fear of the risk, and just the unknown and the risk, right? Which I think is very real, both in TFT, especially if you're trying to lean into strategies that you have never really attempted before, and also in real life, like with what's happening with AI. So I'm curious, like when you were, I imagine, and maybe I'm projecting onto you. So part of the question I would pose is, how did you go about practicing leaning into higher variance play? And if you did have a deliberate approach to that, how did you handle the emotional discomfort with entering the unknown more?
I'm trying to think. I don't think my approach has been especially deliberate to try to expose myself to these types of things. The things I think playing in call and hearing several people on an augment selection very adamantly all believe this augment is so much better. As I said, as you were saying earlier, I'm easily swayed if several people that I think highly of say one thing is a good play. If 5 of them all say that, I already know I'm wrong. If my inclination is not to do that, it doesn't take much to convince me if the opinion is coming from a wide variety of people who I think are very good. And so that is what convinced me to start clicking on these things. It'll be, the examples I'll give you are spreading roots 2-1 when I have like no good econ augment, instead of clicking like or like branching out or iron assets, for example. Iron assets, super vanilla, right? 3 gold component. Branching out, and iron assets isn't even that good, right? Oh, another really good example that now I always lean into very often is gold destiny. Gold destiny or silver destiny, 2-1, where all your options are mid, and here you have +3 gold plus augment, random augment, right? And that one, for me, I just have to be convinced how valuable the 3 gold is, and just thinking through all the variety of augments and trying to average out, and instead of thinking of worst case scenario, just thinking of like the average augment. and really just assigning a value to it. On the side of the discomfort, I think I've always been fairly reasonable at not having too much like anxiety, I guess, around like venturing into uncharted or uncomfortable territories. I think when I do even struggle a little bit with that, I try to just ground everything in what I view as like logical or like proof based, where you just say exactly what I was saying, where I just try to, for example, if I was really scared of taking Gold Destiny or branching out, my study group helped with that a lot. Broseph was really good at with branching out, saying, well, if you're scared of this augment, he didn't state it in exactly that way, but basically he would say, let's just go through every single augment, have a game plan for literally every single augment. In fact, it was harder before. It was would you get a dummy plus two emblems? So I think this is from 2 sets ago. And we went over every single combo of 2 emblems on a dummy. And you assign your estimated AVP for each line. You give yourself a game plan for every single line. And then from there, you just do the math. What is the overall AVP? And your augment is now an RNG augment, and it's now just an augment that averages of whatever it does. And at that point, your decision is no longer a risky augment. It's literally just whatever the number is, if that makes sense. It's now that you have a game plan and you average it out. And that makes it a lot less daunting in my mind.
Yeah. So really thoroughly playing out all the possible outcomes and accepting the risk, the downside, but also leaning into the upside and understanding what your expected case is, as opposed to viewing taking a high variance play as like just leaping into the unknown.
Exactly. You just have to not fall for the names of these augments, like Call to Chaos. It's not. It's literally just a table of a bunch of usually item augments. There's some like hits. We just have to understand it for exactly what it is. You cannot like fall prey to, this is a Gamba augment and I'm scared of taking this, or it is what it is, and you just have to understand the actual thing that it gives you and the probabilities.
Mm-hmm. Yep, makes sense. Okay, another Frodan interview question that came up that I wanted to double click on is, you talked about approaching your games, because you played a lot of the games from Lost Streak, and like your Void game, your Baron game was played off of basically one life. That's like when you started the game, essentially. And I think Deepay was mentioning like how did you keep your composure, right? And this is something I've talked about too and commented to you about, like watching you play in Paris. And your response was like, that's what you played for. Like it's the thrill of competition. It's the experience that you've had in, golf and Clash and whatever else, all the other game experiences that you've had in your life. And like that thrill is what draws you to the game. And I'm curious, for people out there, Deepay was saying that if he were in your shoes, he'd be shaking. Like I would be shaking. Like, and I shared with you at Paris, like my hands were shaking. So I'm curious, how do you feel like you developed that skill over time? Maybe that's very well developed for you now, but was that always the kind of case for you? Was there a point early on, let's say in your golf career or whatever else, where maybe you did have more nerves? And if so, like how did you go about practicing and improving that? And maybe how would you suggest for others out there who maybe struggle with similar stuff, how maybe they or I can go about working on that deliberately?
I actually think the deliberate sort of improver in me would be a little disappointed with my answer in that. This is one of the few things that I feel I actually had the benefit of having it come fairly, I don't want to call it naturally, because I've thought through this a lot. I don't like anything saying it's just natural inclination or whatever. I thought through why I don't get as nervous, I guess, as I could be in situations like these. And a lot of it is just from my upbringing, in that my dad was very much like a competitor through and through and loved situations like these. He was a collegiate basketball athlete. And growing up, he just always made these situations seem so exciting. He always like...
Well, can you give me like an example? Like,
yeah.
What's the story of your dad?
So he would, like, on a practice green, just practicing putting, he would always make up these hypothetical scenarios of, all right, you're making this putt, you're in the last hole of the US Open, you have you have a one shot advantage over Tiger Woods. What, he just put us a random name. If you miss the putt, we're going home, and that's it. You miss the cut, and that's it. But if you make it, and then he would never be negative about it. He would always and if I missed, he'd always have some really convenient excuse for me. Don't worry about it. Like your club, he never used the word choke. He always made everything so positive in an exciting way. And coupled with that, my first few experiences of having this play out in tournament, when I was 9, I remember very distinctly, I was 9 years old and I had like a putt on the last hole to win the tournament from like a distance that you would expect like a 20% success rate. And because my dad had it and I didn't know anything about success rates of putts back then, right? Like I'm 9.
Yeah.
And because
of what your dad did.
Because how my dad was putting me in these situations, to me, it was like, I'm guaranteed making this. No fear, no nothing. And like objectively, it's a downhill putt, which is scary as shit, because if you pass the hole, you can even lose a tournament, because you go too far past, you hit a 3-putt and then you bogey and then you lose instead of tying.
Yeah.
And I just had completely zero fear. And I look back when I finally had some knowledge of like, I actually was not favored to make that at all. And like, I wasn't favored to win the tournament, but like, I was just so brainwashed to believe that I am going to make this. And every single, like, what do you call clutch moment after that in my golf career, I also had just a similar mindset of I'm just going to make it. Like, there's just no doubt. And so much of that is really just from the delusional upbringing from a very competitive father, who I'm extremely grateful that that's how he had me approach these things. He would also, as I said, like every time I would fail, because I definitely was not like 100% clutch rate. I think if anything, I am probably less clutch than I believe myself to be. But I think that's exactly where you want to be as a player, is that you believe, to be a little more delusional in that way. I think I take pride in not being delusional about my overall like approach and my level of skill. But when it comes to like my ability to perform under pressure, I am proudly delusional in that I am believing that I am clutch, if that makes sense.
That's so fascinating. So in the times that you maybe missed the putt when your dad set up that scenario, would you actually go home? Like, he would follow through?
Yeah, he would like make it so it felt like there was a punishment, but he would always like, it would never be like, oh, you choked or whatever. It would just be like, next time you'll get it, or like, oh, we better change like your putter. Like, how did you feel about, oh, but your caddy gave you the wrong read? Like, there's always such a convenient excuse that made it not fall on me. So like, there was a consequence, and it made me look forward to the next thing, but it was not like painful. It was not like I choked.
That's so fascinating. I'm gonna try that with my kids now.
I don't even know how he came to this approach. I don't even think it was founded in any like crazy like philosophical belief. It just was what worked for him. And from what I know, watching like some videos of him, no, my grandfather was not an athlete, and he also like didn't like raise my dad that closely with his performance related activities like basketball, which is what my dad focused on. Right, played basketball in college, and so I think a lot of it is just his beliefs, and it just worked out. He was very clutch himself from what I've seen in the videos of him playing college basketball, and like people believed in him, and he took some big shots, made some game winners and whatnot. And he loved watching a lot of Michael Jordan. Yeah. A lot of, like he's all his favorite athletes are all like the guys you like Mamba mentality, the guys that are super clutch. Tiger Woods, right? He idolizes those guys, as do I, because of that. And yeah, what he's done has worked for me for sure.
Do you have any siblings?
I have one brother, and we could not be more different, which is kind of crazy.
So has your brother adopted? No, okay, so he has not adopted many.
Neither of us are adopted. It's just my dad has spent way more time with me, and that's why I know a lot of my approach is due to this relationship I had with my dad. He was the one who got me introduced into golf, and my brother and I are super. He's not competitive. He's not addicted to like high pressure situations like this. Like, I don't know if he would say he like dislikes these situations, but he doesn't like look forward to them as much as I do in these ways. And I think a lot of that is just because we were raised slightly differently, despite being in the same family.
That's so fascinating. So then, in the context of all these stories and scenarios that your dad has made up around, like, okay, this is the clutch situation. Let me ask you a hypothetical. Let's say, whether it's in this, let's just imagine it's this world, right? You go into worlds, you're well prepped, you've done all this stuff, you feel ready, you get to the final game, you're in checkmate. And it's the exact scenario that your dad described, but it's for TFT as opposed to, whatever the other infinite scenarios your dad has made up, and then you win it all. Like, how do you think that's gonna feel?
I mean, it's literally the moment that you dream of, like chasing all your dreams. Any dream that anyone has, this is like literally the pinnacle of what everything would be for me. And so it would be absolutely nuts. But at the same time, I don't know if it would be like this, like I've made it and like this is it kind of thing. It's actually after having achieved so many of my intermediate goals as well, I think it would be in the moment, it would feel like everything. And then I'm pretty sure after the fact, it would also be like well, what's next? Which is kind of crazy. But definitely in the moment, it would be everything. I would imagine it would be everything that I could ever like dream of in terms of achieving something competitively. This is the whole reason that I quit my job, and the whole reason I wanted to pursue this, almost like you can call it like a side quest in my life, is that I feel like I've never fully like realized my full potential with competitive endeavors. I dropped short in both golf and Clash Royale, and Worlds is truly like the pinnacle of what you can achieve in this game, right? You know, this game is not. I'm not delusional. This game is not League of Legends. It's not like the NBA of sports. It's, you know, it's on a lower tier than that. But for me, this is my Masters. This is my U.S. Open. You know, the regionals was my U.S. Open, and this Worlds is my, you know, whatever, my Olympics or whatever you want to call it. And so it doesn't mean anything to me that this is not like the pinnacle of. To me, this is the pinnacle.
Yeah. So let's also continue this hypothetical. If you win, you feel great. You're on top of the world. You're over the moon. And then there's that thought that you mentioned, like, okay, now what? Like, what would that now what be? Because this was where dish soap was 2 years ago, right? Like, and I feel like so much of, you know, this is like Jordan after he won his first three. It's like, why keep going? Like, what do you think would be the thing that drives you after you win one?
To be completely honest, I think there's a good shot if I'm to truly win Worlds at some point, there's a good shot that I would hang it up not long after. Like a really good shot. Because to me, that would already be like I validated my approach. I don't think I've had doubts in my ability to maintain consistency. It's always been about like what is possible. Yeah. And of course, you could argue further. Like you could still argue what is possible could extend beyond like winning once. But I think I still have so many more aspirations in my life. And with my life being a big part of it, a huge part of it being wanting to enjoy my life with my wife, who's been the rock throughout all of this, and having promised to her very reasonably so that I'm not going to be an esports competitor for the rest of my life. I would not want that for anyone. For their partner to be a full-time TFTer forever, or even through their 40s. Like that would not be very reasonable. I don't think she would have been down to marry me in the first place if she knew that she was signing up for that forever. And so I think there's a good shot that I would want to bring it home, call it quits. And I don't know. I say that now, and who knows? Maybe I win Worlds, and then it's like, I still suck. And I think a lot of it too would be tied to like how much I feel like I could still improve. Yeah, a lot of it would be tied to that. But I think just objectively in terms of accomplishments, I would find it difficult for me to sit there. I find it difficult to believe I could sit there and like not feel like that was the pinnacle of what I could achieve. But I also, that being said, I also don't want to like cut myself short, right? So it's kind of an odd scenario because like, what if I get there and I'm like, I didn't even play that well. I won, and I like it felt so easy, which I mean, I don't think that's very likely, but like, I'm just saying, like, if right, then wouldn't I want to continue and try to keep going for more? So I don't know. Hopefully I will have that problem. It would be a nice problem to have.
So the intuition is not immediately like, I need to be the greatest of all time, which means to have the most world's championships. Like that is not the first thing that crosses your mind.
I don't think so. I don't know why that isn't the first thing that crosses my mind. Because I think I've like, in my heart of hearts, I've always been competitive with myself. I don't think like my competitive drive has ever really truly been like to beat another or other players. It's always been, especially with this endeavor with TFT, because I'm a 33-year-old retired software engineer. I don't think I'm really competing with people on similar grounds, right? Like, we're all in very different points in our lives. And so I have been very upfront knowing that I'm competing with sort of my inner demons in myself and trying to, or my inner child, and just trying to get to what I can get to. And for whatever reason, I guess I've set that site to be, well, it's been a moving goalpost, because it used to be making regionals, and then it became making worlds. And then because making worlds felt not quite enough, and because I went dead last time when I went to worlds, it's now, I don't even know what it is, right? I mean, I know that if it win worlds, like that would be what I consider as a pinnacle, but as I said, the goalpost has been moving. So my answer is very likely, not final, I guess, in that sense.
Yeah. You talked about your inner child and your inner demons. What do you feel like you struggle with the most when it comes to TFT, and like what's the hardest part about being a competitor for you, and maybe how has that evolved over this whole journey of playing TFT?
The hardest part about being a competitor. I love competing so much. It's giving me pause to think of what I think is the hardest part. Which is why I feel like kind of a fraud when people say fraud when people call me like one of the hardest workers. Because to me, I was telling my wife this the other day. It neither feels hard nor does it feel like work. So why are people calling it hard work if it doesn't feel like either of those things? I feel like it feels more like, I mean, if I want to put it less cheesy of like, I just feel like I'm doing one thing I like. It feels more like an addiction than anything. To me, I'm just like addicted to the idea of improving. I'm addicted to the idea of competing and trying to do well. The hardest part, honestly, is I feel like the really boring answer is the hardest part is when I have to step away. When I have to go to like a wedding or like not doing that's the hardest part. And I'm being honest, I feel like I like every aspect of it. Okay, I guess I feel like when I know that the process of going through, it's going to be helpful towards the end goal. I feel like I enjoy almost every aspect of it. I think I do enjoy playing the game more than sitting there and analyzing and studying, I guess. So in that sense, it is harder for me to want to do like the more boring thing in my mind, which is to study stats, for example, on a given patch versus to play on ladder or in scrims. But I wouldn't call it necessarily hard. I feel like I'm still always fairly motivated. So I'll have to get back to you on like what I think of as like the
Okay.
Because I think losing, I also look forward to like what I can learn out of experiences like those. So yeah, kind of a weird answer in that way.
You mentioned that TFT is kind of like this side quest in your life, and if you are able to bring home the championship, you could just hang up your hat. Like that's like, okay, completed this side quest. What if that were to happen, or just whenever your TFT career is over down the line, like, and you look back at what you got out of this experience, what do you think you'll remember? Like, what will stand out to you, 10 years, 20 years down the line when you look back at this?
Oh man. I think I've always been a sucker for the big moments, which is why like I've always looked forward to like, the 1 HP win outs and whatnot. I will remember things like the draft of what I drafted together, the lobby of drafting the 3 Citadel guys. That's the whole reason I did that. It's because I want to create more moments like this. I want to be on my deathbed and have like dozens and dozens of memories that I'm like, oh, can I ever like, can I believe that I did that? And like, I want to collect as many of those as I can. And so for me, it'll be the fist. It'll always be like the fist bumps, the winning against having a wife rush into the room. It'll be out positioning Broseph to make it through the 4 game cut on day 2 of regionals. It'll always be like the cheesy big moments and the fist bumps. Will be like the thing I remember most vividly. In terms of what I will take away the most, if I am to continue to have success, which I hope so, it will be just belief in my approach and my process. It just feels like validation. It's sort of what I think a lot of us are chasing in everything we have. It's just validation that we, can be accepted for what we are. We believe in our approach, right? I think all of us struggle with in some form of like, whether it's identity or feeling like the way you do something is not what's been accepted. For me, with TFT, I really, really appreciate how I'm viewed as, even though I did say that I don't feel like it's hard work for me, I appreciate that people view me as someone that is very effortful, and that that is sort of how people believe I am improving at the game. because in other endeavors, I have felt that I've been viewed, especially even by like the people closest to me, which has made it even more difficult, like my parents. Um, in a lot of ways, have viewed me as almost like more so talent than effort. And I've always felt misunderstood in that way. And so this is another reason why I've really enjoyed being in the TFT community. Is I feel like I am understood in that way, and that I'm not viewed as the guy that is extremely talented. I'm more so viewed as the guy that has had to work to get there. Not to say that I'm coming into the zero talent, and I don't want to try to say that I'm all effort and that yeah, I've made everything that has come my way. But yeah, I they really like that aspect of my how I'm viewed in TFT.
That's fascinating. How much of your work ethic do you feel, and maybe I'm projecting on this, is like almost like a direct response to your parents' perception of you being all talent and not a hard worker?
The thing is, if you had their perspective, I don't think their take is that unreasonable, because I'm only the way that I am with endeavors that I'm really into. And so I like, yes, I'm really into TV, and this is why like you can think of me as like a hard worker in that sense. I am fairly lazy when it comes to most other things. Like if I'm really into one thing, then I'll be there and I'll do everything that gets you better at that. But if I'm not into something, I am a lot more like I am not like a completionist. I'm not like extremely like must be fully thorough in every way. I do what I view as necessary to get the job done. And in TFT at the moment, it requires me to put like my everything, because I have to. Because otherwise, if I don't, I already know I lose. But that's probably why in other endeavors that I haven't enjoyed as much, especially for example golf, which I quit. I wasn't as into. I like competing, but I wasn't as into it. And so my dad never viewed me, and he was correct. I wasn't the hardest worker at golf, and so it makes sense in that way. But no, I actually don't think that my work ethic is because of their doubts, or not their view of me. I think it really is just stemming from my desperation to wanting to be as good as I can be at the thing that I'm doing.
Okay. Switching gears, I want to switch from like kind of more about you to more about the community and your sport structure. You mentioned your wife being your rock, and on stream, like people know about your wife, like how important she is, how supportive she's been to you. Can you just tell me a little bit more about your relationship with her, how she supported you, the challenges of being in a relationship while competing and just having to devote so much time to studying and playing and practicing, and how you go about like kind of setting boundaries to still be able to preserve, a solid foundation with her despite all of the time commitments with TFT?
Yeah, I'm down to go into it a bit. I think I've been extremely lucky to be with a partner who's extremely patient and also able to understand, or at the very least like accept perspectives that are very different from her own. So I say this because on the patient side, but help explain that a little bit more, is she's a pediatrician, and so she deals with some of the more difficult aspects of raising seeing a child and the hospital and all that. But even besides that, in terms of not having the perspective that I have, she's never been into gaming at all in any way in her life. And so even just the idea that one can be like as into competitive gaming was so foreign to her, such that you wouldn't expect that just me explaining it to her would like allow that to sort of click in her head and have her be understanding. And it's one of the things that really drew me to her when we were first like dating and just getting to know each other, is she is always so open and not judgmental of other people's perspectives on things. I don't think I'd ever met a person as open to other people's perspectives as she was. And I think I see it in a lot of the ways that she has, like the friends she's able to draw, and the way that people sort of open up around her. She really is able to let people feel safe in that way. And that enabled me to sort of share all this with her right up front. I think I never had, I'd been with other partners in the past, exes, and I never felt this safe around like saying that, I feel like I need this in my life. I feel like I wouldn't feel comfortable in my own skin if I didn't pursue this. And me sort of being able to express that all to her, I think is what's enabled her to truly understand me in that way and support me. But even beyond that, I think it's also insane in terms of the schedule and the as you're saying, like the boundaries and like what on a daily basis, right? Like I'm sitting here not very available. We've made like compromises in terms of like how often I should be checking my phone to make sure like if she needs me for something, despite being in the middle of a game. She also I'm very lucky in that she enjoys cooking. And so it makes it a lot easier for me in that sense where even though she's like really busy with her own work, she enjoys coming home and making meals, and it makes it a lot easier for me being in the middle of a really long day prepping and whatnot. So many things have worked out in that way, and I'll always be so grateful of this time in our lives. And I think a big part of it too is I've always promised her since I started this is that it wouldn't be permanent. I think that's a big part of it because I don't think it would be very reasonable. I don't think she would. I don't think she should be down to accept like a situation like this. Anyone shouldn't. If it's like you're someone is just sitting there focused on their own endeavor for God knows how long, for forever, and that's a permanent thing. It almost sounds like that's not like a relationship, right? And so, which is why like I think it's helped in that I've had positive results as well, and she sees it online and she's like the success I'm having, and so it at least is grounded in some level of like we're getting stuff out of it, right? It's not like I'm sitting here grinding and still like hard stuck diamond. No flame people who are hard stuck diamond if you're sitting there grinding all day. But if you are married to someone and you're convincing them, like at least get some results so that they can further support you more easily, I guess. Yeah, I think that's how it helps for sure.
I think it's super interesting to me when you describe your wife's personality as being extremely open-minded, non-judgmental, able to be open to and receptive to different points of view. Like that basically just describes the first part of our conversation on your personality and how you approach study groups and how most people are not like that. I'm curious how much of when you were dating, you said you were drawn to her personality because of that. How much of that do you find in just generally the relationships in your life and your friend groups, and how much of that do you feel like was influenced? How much of your own personality and being open-minded was influenced by your wife in that regard? How much of it was you kind of were always like that, or where did that develop for you, and how did it become so important for you to know that you wanted that?
Oh, it's a really good question. I've thought about this a lot, and actually I grew up, and for most of my like younger adulthood, I would describe myself, and everyone around me would describe me as not open-minded. I've always been very closed-minded. I think if you speak directly about like very specifically about maybe like logical things, I am open-minded in that like I need to see proof, and so I will hear all aspects. But when it comes to like being more like, for example, political, I grew up in the Philippines, and I was a lot more conservative. Not that I care to sit here and talk about politics, but I grew up a lot more conservative just because that's how things are in the Philippines, and religious. And I eventually made my way to California, which is a very liberal, and San Francisco of all places, and Stanford for college. And a lot of my views were reshaped. A lot of what things that I had understood when I was younger, I just see people from different backgrounds seeing things and explain things very differently. And I think it was through that and coming to, and I think that also like shaped a lot of like even my ways going back to like things that are on the logical side. I just value approaches and back to the people that are able to sort of or prove that they can go from being closed-minded or like viewing some things a certain way and then being presented with new evidence and then sort of changing their approach to things. I think it's not a very common thing for people to really have, and I think I grew up not having that, and just through things like golf lessons and sort of being shown you can be doing something the wrong way and do something the right way and you get better results, or conversations with friends or through school, you sort of iteratively go through life and I've been fortunate to have many situations where a change in perspective has resulted in something very positive. I think, and that makes it easier to open up, if that makes sense. As opposed to like, it's understandable to have the opposite view if every time change comes about, something negative happens, right? And so a lot of it is the correlations of what you end up experiencing. Yeah, sorry, I was a little going off into the weeds for some of that response, but the short answer is that, yeah, a majority of my close relationships, friends, people that I've been drawn to are in fact people that have demonstrated this, and I have learned from them. If anything, like I started off more close-minded and have become more open because of these relationships and people that I've been drawn to.
That's really cool. Going back to your wife being a support structure for you, how much of the stuff that happens with TFT do you share with her? Like the low rolls and like when you lost the tiebreaker with Weijin, like how much do you vent with your wife versus like, okay, this is like the Great Wall of China here, and I'm not gonna, what's your guys' relationship like with regards to that?
She's a really, really, really good patient listener. Almost too good. I think her faults are that she extends herself too thin at times, or she can like sit there and like respond to every friend, every message, listen to her husband the whole day, and she'll start to forget that like she needs to pay attention to her own things, such that like over time it'll build up some level of fatigue in that way. But she's willing to listen as long as I'm willing to vent, which I will say I'm not like I'm not like the most prolific venter or anything like that, but like she is always down to ask and hear, and like it's up to me to sort of try to gauge how much of it is she truly trying to know versus like she's trying to ask to be nice. But she's always down to listen, like perma. So I have to be careful to not overly like I think I can definitely go on and on about how my things are going on my end. And what's crazy is that like the reality is I'm here talking about like how my day went, clicking buttons on a screen, and on her end she was dealing with children's lives, right? And so it really helps me in that sense as well to like understand and not get too like lost in my own stuff. Like she deals with death. She deals with like she's a resident, pediatric resident. She goes through all these different rotations. Thankfully, her fellowship and her main specialty is not going to be, well, thankfully for me in the sense that it doesn't sound stressful, but for her she's doing what she wants, and so but it's not going to be a specialty that's like dealing with anything too crazy or stressful in that sense. But throughout her rotation she's dealt with very serious things, and so yeah, I have to make sure that I'm also like asking back, because I can get lost in just talking about my own tournaments, right?
Yeah. And switching gears on community to study group with cooking brownies and how successful the group has been, especially recently in this set. What do you think makes this study group so special and so unique? And how do you think about, particularly in the context of TFT being a competitive game, the level of cooperation and openness and knowledge sharing that occurs in this group? Like I recall Frodan making some comment, and I guess this happens a little bit in cooking brownies now that I've been able to get a little bit exposure. Frodan was talking about for VIT guys, like if one of them gets knocked out, they're kind of hate watching the other guys because they don't want to look too bad relative to the rest of the group. Whereas I feel like there's a lot more positivity and like positive sumness with the cooking brownies group, at least from the limited exposure I've had. So I want to get your thoughts on what do you think just makes this group so special?
I've been so lucky for having like this being the only group I've ever really studied with, and for it to have worked out as well as it has. I wish I like had more experiences to answer this question more thoroughly, to like differentiate with other groups. I can't quite say exactly differentiating in that way. I guess from the perspective first of not like hate watching each other or like being jealous in that way, I think on the vitality side, these guys are like really, really, really good friends, even outside of studying the game, right? And so I think it's more natural to have a wider variety of like emotions with groups like that. I think our cooking brownies group, yes, we're all I consider myself very close with all of them, but I don't think it's on the same level as like I think a lot of these guys are like IRL, like Soju and Prestivan, right? Managed with IRL. And so there's probably a whole host of reasons that, you know, that they can have more depth to their relationship in that way. So in that regard, I feel we truly do just hope for the best for these guys, right? Except for when they're in my lobby, then I want them to go. But outside of that, I think from what I hear, consistency levels of other groups can waver based on a whole host of things. I think our group, for whatever reason, I can speak to the people I guess that are in there. We're just consistent. I don't think that there are particular games that will randomly go off and play. Maybe like some subgroups here and there, or like we don't really lose, I guess, focus in that way. And so I think a lot of it can be attributed to that. At the very least, like it's a very easy culprit to point to, because I think when like Bosso Skills will like mention that their group gets sidetracked by like playing Valorant a lot, or Soju's friend group will say that, and then I just think, well, our group doesn't really do that, so like maybe that could be one of the reasons, right? Like it's always hard to say exactly, and while I want to sit here and say we have the best approach and we, you know, we're the most logical and the most like I think, I mean, as I always am, I think the more like reasonable thing to say is we're very consistent, and this game is a game where everyone is messing up in all sorts of ways, such that if you fall off track, you'll mess up a lot more. And so I don't want to be overly arrogant in that our approach is like goated or anything, but at the very least, we are very consistent, and I'm extremely proud of that.
Mm-hmm. How much of it do you think may or may not be connected with the fact that Cooking Brownies is so global, as opposed to most study groups are like within a region? Yeah, can you speak to maybe any hypotheses you might have around that?
Oh, I think in that regard, you're on point in that it is easier to be open with people you're not competing with. Right? The only time we compete against EU is Worlds, and it's Worlds and the EME, the one cup, right, where there's EU versus NA. And so I have like zero hesitation to share with any of my EU folks in there. I mean, I would say the same for my NA folks as well, but like realistically, if I see them in my same lobby the next day, like, is there some hesitation? Like maybe a little bit, right? Or like maybe I'm not willing to share like exactly my own play style. Like, for example, I'll say I'll bring one thing up which is kind of funny, in that I was reviewing with Robin the day I think before the final day, and he was saying like, oh, he should have like been more careful about how he played full open on stage 2 because he lost his streak to me. And I messaged Raptor and I was like, should I tell this guy that like if I'm ever in his lobby, he should actually be really careful, because I'm open in this patch. I'm open like 90% of my games. And so if you're in my lobby, like you should be really careful. Like, I mean, but at the same time, like this is all specific to one patch. I don't mind saying it out loud now, but like, you know, whereas if I'm just talking straight strategy with like an EU guy, like it doesn't matter as much because I'm only seeing them every now and then, right? And so I do think it contributes a lot into making the group a lot more open in that way and less adversarial.
Mm-hmm. And so then on the subject of regions as well, since I'm talking with all the regional winners and I'm asking this question, this is actually your question. What do you think are the biggest differences between the America's region versus the other ones? What's your hypothesis, at least? Particularly because, I mean, I think Americas and EU have a better understanding of each other's perspectives, but APAC is like kind of this siloed region, at least for the most part, because at least Americas and EU plays against each other. The language is a lot easier for, you know, us to communicate. Culturally, it's a lot closer. What do you view as like kind of the strengths and weaknesses between the regions?
I would find it hard to believe that APAC is able to communicate across all the players as easily as NA, just by language barrier. It would be impossible for me to come to an understanding that the Japanese players communicate their meta reads with the Koreans, with the Vietnamese super fluidly. Maybe they have some way of doing it, and I'd be extremely impressed to learn that it's something that works for them, because clearly something is working, because APAC has been so dominant for quite a few sets now. And this set they're looking to be just as. I think NA within groups is very communicative, and also I think all the top players have some form of like forum, I guess. The majority, like Weijin, Disho, and everyone has a stream. And so I think info gets spread across very rapidly and fairly, it's communicated fairly well. And so I would hypothesize that lines become like more nuanced aspects of the discussion and of lines these conversations can happen more easily, I guess, right? Which means that you would imagine that that could manifest in lines becoming fine-tuned better. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But you can imagine that they have better conversations, and more in-depth conversations lead to more fine-tuned lines. But it also leads to more things more along lines like, was it sheep's herd mentality, or like everyone sort of following down the same path, right? Less individualistic expressiveness. Which you could argue is more of a strength, right? In APAC regions, I think in the most recent regionals, there is a Japanese player who like played a shit ton of Darius. I think it was Mori, and it was through his results. I think in the scrims, even just seeing him, and in Project PPE have such insane results with this, that I started, and many players started to have these beliefs that Darius is broken. But I think that I can imagine that as being one of the strengths in APAC. But I'm sort of guessing as to what makes the region very strong. But yeah, that's sort of my perspective on it. But I've always like pondered, if I ever move back to the Philippines for whatever reason, because my wife's family is all from the Philippines, and I am my family's from the Philippines as well. If for like whatever reason that happens, not in the distant future, I don't think it would, but if I played in APAC, like how would my perspective on things change? And would it be? I imagine it actually be harder. Looking at the field, it'd be harder for me to qualify for Worlds and do well. And so it's an interesting thought.
Yeah, that is very interesting. And also when I just posted Aaliyah's pro chat yesterday, and I had someone, like a Chinese player, reach out and was like asking, can I translate that for the Chinese audience? Because they're like, oh, like we love eating stuff like this up. And I feel like there's like, I've had other Chinese content creators contact me to translate my content as well. And I've talked to, I forget who it was, like Waterpark Tactics or like Kai or whoever else. I feel like there's a lot of translation that happens that way, whereas I don't really see that much, like that many, West content creators that are like, let me translate what's happening in Asia. I mean, we kind of watch some like YBY1 and like some Ironbog, but like their actual, the way they think about the game from their mouths, I rarely see that. So I also think that there's maybe part of this where like they're getting a lot of info from us and we don't really get as much from them.
Oh, for sure. I definitely believe and feel that, for sure.
Yeah.
I think even not even just NA, but like even not even just NA APAC, but I think even like some of the top EU players that I have been studying with, Goboster, for example, who's joined our group fairly recently, has like brought up, why don't we study that? Why don't you guys, not speaking for himself, why don't you guys study as much APAC? I have, and he's showed us like lists of Twitch VODs and Twitch links that he follows, YouTube streams of other APAC players. But he was just a little surprised to learn that even we, who I feel like we do a fairly like reasonable job of trying to review other people's games, don't review enough APAC in his mind. Mm-hmm. And you see exactly what you're saying, the reverse, where you see a lot of APAC looking at everyone else, right? They learn from other people in their own region and from the NA guys. And so, yeah, we definitely have a lot to potentially gain from trying to be more open in that way.
Yeah, for sure. I want to be mindful of our time, so I'm going to try to wrap this up with maybe one or two more questions, because I know you're prepping for Worlds. For the thumbnail of this video, what's it could be favorite set 16 unit, could be your favorite set 16 moment so far, and a unit that played a role in that. Could be a Noxus unit. Like, what stands out to you? What jumps out to you to put this video into posterity?
Maybe like a one Kiana, because I open on I always like one Kiana on 1-4.
Right.
I'm not sure if I. So I'll let you guess. an answer to this. So about my tournament, this most recent tournament, the regionals, I looked through all my games on the plane ride on the way through and back to the wedding I attended. Of all my 16 games that I played, including day 3, how many of these games do you think I leveled on 2-1? And further, how many of my 16 games did I 5 win streak stage 2?
I watched your interview, so I'm cheating.
Oh. It was 0 to both.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I think open porting with a Kiana is a good thumbnail, I guess.
Yeah, that captures it. All right, so then I had a few Marcel Proust quotes, but I'll limit it to one just to keep things short and sweet. I'll ask this one because it kind of connects with the story that you shared with your wife and how this is kind of a side quest for you, but also I think how much TFT as a side quest has meant to you. This is, a huge part of your, I mean, it's basically 90 whatever % of your life right now. And also I think about this in the context of where the world is going. And like, I don't know if we've talked about this, like simulation theory and everything, but all right, the quote is, "Love is a striking example of how little reality means to us." And so I'll pose that both in the context of your relationship with your wife, but also in the context of when you've described, even when I asked the question, like, oh, what's the hardest part of competing? And you're like, dude, this is all just fucking amazing, right? Like
it's hard when I am not competing.
Right. It's like when you get pulled away from it, that's when it's painful. So what does that quote mean to you? Love is a striking example of how little reality means to us. And I think this is also relevant as AI is going to be shifting the landscape of what it means to work, what it means to be human. Who knows whether or not we can make this transition into a post-scarce world and the idealistic utopia of whatever tomorrow that some people promise. But yeah, just share with me the thoughts that pop into your head with that quote.
Oh, that's deep, man. I feel like it sort of gets at how we all basically have our own reality that we have for ourselves, right? Like the whole idea of reality, which is not an idea, it's literally tangible, it's literally right there in front of us, is in fact subjective in all our own ways, right? And if there is something that we each pursue of our own, whether it's in the form of like love as a relationship or love as like an endeavor or a hobby, you end up having your own form of your world or your reality around that, right? Like for me to sit here and say I love playing TFT, I love this game, someone could very well look at the life I'm living and say this is their fucking nightmare. Like my wife, for example, hates competing, and she's like, "How could you ever want to put yourself under so much stress? It sounds like the worst thing ever." And to me, I love this, right? And so our realities are completely different in that way. And yeah, it's just striking how we all have such different perspectives on everything in that way. To me, that's sort of what it gets at. Is just everyone has their own different view on things, and what you choose to love is really just your own spin on things, and someone else could have a completely different view on it.
All right, love it. So to wrap things up, for people watching this who want to be able to follow you, to be able to support you on your world's journey, after that, well, part of me is hoping you don't. If you truly would hang up your hat if you won, part of me is hoping you don't win too soon.
Game one hate watcher. Unlucky.
Yeah. So for those who want to kind of support you, what's the best way for them to do that?
You can follow me on Twitch. I'm not as consistent when I'm competing in tournaments, but during the tournaments themselves, I stream all the competitions. That's at Marcel P _TFT. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcel P Clash. I have a Discord as well, which you can look up, or you can see it through my my Twitch. I link it on there if you're curious. I every now and then post like meta reads or just respond to some TFT questions, and so yeah, that's how you can reach out.
All right, awesome. thanks again, Marcel, for doing Pro Chat number 2. It's been super fun. Any last shout outs before we hang this thing up?
Thanks so much for having me. Just the usuals. I think big shout out if my wife gets around to watching this. I mean, you're everything I said. So you're my rock. You've supported me so through all of this, and so there will be an end to it. So at some point, no promises, but maybe after Worlds if I win. My mom has told me that she watches actually a lot of my interviews. She will search my name very recently, which I found very, very sweet. And so if she gets around to watching this, I appreciate you, Mom. I think my parents have gone through, especially my dad has gone through like different phases of sort of understanding with my pursuit of this endeavor. And at this point, I think they've come around and are extremely supportive now. And so I'm super appreciative of that.
That's awesome.
And so I appreciate you guys. And then my study group, I guess, who I'll shout out last, the Mossy and Raptor and all the Cooking Brownie guys. You guys are awesome. Wouldn't be here without y'all.
All right. I want to say hi to Marcel's mom. Hey, Marcel's mom. Your son's awesome. Good stuff. All right. For everyone that's watching at home, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.